Hello and welcome to our webinar with Ann Whitford-Paul, and this is to introduce our writing picture books class at svslearn.com. I'm Will Terry. I don't know if I should call myself a host.
Why not?
Lee White is also here tonight, and yeah, we're going to get started on this and see what Ann has to offer. And we're really excited that she's willing to do this for us, and I'm going to turn the time over to her. You should get a little pop-up on your screen there.
I got it. Okay. Thank you everybody for coming to this tonight. Oh my God, there's a sign here for me.
Yeah, you have to accept that.
Click, no, I'm okay. Show my screen.
Yeah, click that.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
there we go.
Sorry. First of all, I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. I know everybody has busy lives, and I thank you for your interest in this class, which will be an 8-week session plus a live critique sessions at the end. For those of you who take the class who want to submit a manuscript for a critique. So what I'm here to tonight is just to introduce myself, introduce the class, give you a little bit of information about both, and then answer your questions. So thanks for coming, and let's start. Because this is being recorded, you're not going to see me live except for the end questions. So I thought you might like to know or have an idea of who's talking. And I think it's really important for all of you to think about what brought you to writing. And I'm going to tell you what brought me to writing and let you know how it's influenced what I write. And that's why I want you, while I'm talking, to think also about how you came to be a writer. Okay, this is me really little, and as you can see, I loved books right from the beginning. These were my two favorite books, Pat the Bunny, Ferdinand the Bull. I'm sure they're familiar to many of you. And I have to say that one of the great things about writing a children's book and having it published is it has the potential to be passed on from generation to generation. I remember Pat the Bunny and reading that with my parents and scratching the daddy's scratchy face and so forth. And I then read that book with my children, and now my children are reading it with their grandchildren. So this is a wonderful thing that can happen to a published children's book. When I went to school, I looked like this, and I wrote like this. And I'm showing you this story. It was the only story my mother saved. I can't believe it was the best thing I ever wrote, but I always look at artists' work and think, oh, they're so talented. And then once Catherine Hewitt, a wonderful illustrator, showed a picture that she had drawn in elementary school. It was just like the pictures I drew. And I thought, oh, we all start somewhere. So this is where I started. Once upon a time there was a girl, her name was Anne, very original name, right? One day near Christmas, Anne was getting ready, bad speller, thank goodness for spell check these days, for the Christmas party. All the children, I don't know what those were, in Anne and Robbie's room, Robbie was my brother, another original name, were coning. They were going to have something to eat, and they were going to sing after that. After they had gone, Anne said it was a good day after all. Well, not the best story in the world, but this is to give all of us hope and faith that we do improve and we can learn, and that's why you're taking this class, and hopefully, and that's what we're hoping to learn, is how to improve from that to a story that an editor will buy. Now, I was convinced, because even though I loved to read, I was convinced that I didn't have the talent to be a writer, because I never did very well in my writing assignments in school. I didn't think about being a writer in junior high, in high school, in college, even in graduate school. I never thought about writing. Years passed. I married. I had 4 children. And for those of you who are parents, and especially I think for those parents who stay at home, I was the stay-at-home mom, and it was a little hard for me to feel satisfied. I felt that something was missing. And I wanted to go to work, but I had been trained as a social worker, and back in the 70s in California, social services were being cut back and part-time work did not exist. And I was getting pretty depressed, really depressed, thinking there had to be something more that I could do with my life. Not that having children and raising them isn't important, but I wanted something more. So I did what most people do when they're depressed. I went to see a therapist. And this was a very smart therapist, I thought, because he asked me in one of the first sessions if I could do anything at all, what would I want to do? And I cannot believe how quickly the answer came to mind. I didn't think for a minute. I just said, I want to write. It was as simple as that. Well, not quite as simple as that, because nothing is easy. I thought, what will I do? What kind of writing will I do? And what I loved to do best was read with my kids.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Sorry about that. Someone must have joined it. I need to mute them.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay. Mute them. Don't delete them.
They have been muted. They are banished.
Okay.
You may continue.
Okay. What I loved to do most was read with my kids. I loved that close connection. These are 2 of my youngest children. Sorry, I'm going to close my email so that won't come up.
If you
Okay.
here's a rule for webinars: is if you ever need to update your computer, it'll happen during the webinar.
Okay. All right. Well, this problem
So
that we're having. So, okay. All right. We're going to go on. Lots of luck. Okay. So I love that time, and I thought, I'll write picture books. And I had several reasons for that. I thought, they're short. Ooh, that's good. They have lots of pictures, so I don't have to write so much. The words are important, but the pictures are important too, so it put a little less pressure on me. And then I thought, I know all about them from reading to my kids. And of course, the last thing was, I thought, whoa, they'll be easy. Wrong. I'm going to share with you, and please don't think that I'm going to spend all my time reading my books to you, because I'm not. But I will read Word Builder to you because it is about writing. It takes it to its simplest form, and you'll see as I read it, okay? Begin your new construction with 26 letters. Now, I always think it's amazing the variety that we get out of those 26 letters of the alphabet. That's always struck me as a miracle. Anyway, begin your new construction with 26 letters. Hammer A through Z into words. Pile your words like blocks into sentence towers. Measure some tall, saw others short. Mortar each sentence with punctuation. And frame your sentences into paragraph villages. Stack your paragraphs into chapter cities. Keep on building words into sentences, sentences into paragraphs, paragraphs into chapters, until you have created a whole world of book. And then you'll just be so exhausted, you'll have to lie down and take a nap. Well, writing isn't as simple as just putting words and sentences together. Writing a book can take as long as building the skyscraper. And, not to discourage you too much, writing my book that is due out in 2017 was written entirely on a 3-week vacation to visit this incredible granddaughter in Africa. So I want you to know it's work, but it can, when inspiration comes, it can go faster. I've been a word builder for 40 years. Now, I put this sentence up here because trustworthy has been bandied about in this election as to which of the candidates is most trustworthy, and I realized that I'm not completely trustworthy because I told Will and the people at the Society of Visual Storytelling that I published 20 books. And I realized I've only published 19. So I'm sorry about that. I guess I can rationalize and say I sold 2 books that never were published. And this sometimes happens. Oh, excuse me, my son is here and I want to close the door.
That's all right.
I sold 1 book and the editor lost her enthusiasm for the project, and I sold another book and the publishing house closed, so that was the end of that book. So I'm going to quickly go through just so you know what I have published, okay? And I'm going to tell you a little bit of background just because I'm always fascinated by where writers get their ideas. It used to feel like magic to me. So these all come from my life. Owl at Night was about an owl that chose a tree outside our backyard for its daytime nap. And I was always curious what it did at night. 8 Hands Round came out of my love of patchwork and American history and how people used to live. Shadows Are About and Hello Toes, Hello Feet were all inspired on walks that I took. And I was wondering about what to write about, and I was feeling great about being alone, and then I realized my shadow was with me. And Hello Toes, Hello Feet, what do we walk on? We walk on our feet. Ideas are everywhere. Everything to Spend the Night was inspired by my children, who I insisted that they pack their own overnight bags. And, oh, there's a good friend. Hi, Amy. Everything to Spend the Night, my kids would pack their own bags, and they would always forget something, of course. Silly Sadie and Silly Samuel was inspired by my grandparents, who fought constantly. They would fight over the color of the sky. It used to drive me crazy. The Season Sewn is another book about quilting and patchwork patterns, how they reflect American history. All by Herself was a collection of poems about girls who did brave and heroic things, some of them famous, some of them not. Little Monkey Says Goodnight was inspired by my son, who used to have a litany of people that he would say good night to after I would tuck him into bed and read him a story. We would turn out the light and he would say good night to everyone in the family and to all of his toys, and that inspired that book. Oops, what happened? Hop, Hop, Hop was inspired by my kids wanting to do something like the big kids did, but never quite being able to. Manana Iguana was inspired by a license plate that I saw on a walk that said Manana. And I thought, what rhymes with manana? And iguana came to mind. And this book and Fiesta Fiasco, inspired by the way my kids, when they were invited to a birthday party, would always choose a present for the birthday person that was really something that they wanted for themselves. These two books, plus Hound Culebra and Tortuga in Trouble, were also inspired by my desire to help kids become comfortable with a second language. So I interspersed Spanish words in the text, hoping that kids would be able to repeat them and think that they were speaking another language and want to learn another language. Snail's Goodnight is inspired by my personality, which is one that always is busy doing something, making something, and I love snails because I think they live a slow, leisurely life, and I wish I could live that. So that's where snails. If Animals Kiss Goodnight was a goodnight game that I used to play with my children. We live very close to the Los Angeles Zoo. When we would come home after a trip to the zoo and I would tuck them into bed, we would play games pretending that we were kissing goodnight, like a giraffe, stretching our necks like an elephant. And just to give you an idea, what happened was I tried to write the story like a mother and a child playing the games, and playing this game, and I sent it to the publisher, and the publisher said, this sounds a little incestuous. So I had to do something, so I took the game and just did it as an imagination. And I'm going to talk a bit about how you make your manuscripts unique, and I think changing that from what actually happened is one of the ways to make your book unique. Okay, Word Builder, which we read. Writing picture books, I taught for 10 years at UCLA Extension. I've given numerous talks at SCBWI conferences. I did a summer conference in Portland for 10 years, and these things all went into writing picture books. 'Twas the Late Night of Christmas was a Christmas card poem that I sent to friends one year. And to make it come around and be trustworthy to 20 books, the book If Animals Kiss Goodnight, which was a picture book, became a board book, so I'm putting that in as my 20th book. Okay, my poems have also appeared in numerous anthologies. This is my office. This is where I'm speaking from. It looks really clean this day because it was being photographed for a magazine, but here's what it looks like most of the time. So I'm going to start now talking about the class, now that you know who I am. I'm going to start with a familiar story. The hare was once boasting of his speed before the, I can't see it all. How do I get rid of this thing, Will, on the right?
I
What
can't
is
see.
it? Is it the chat window?
Yeah.
Just grab it up and move it over. It should have a little, like any other window at the top.
We're cheating because we have multiple screens, so it's easier to dump that over onto another one. But
Oh, all right. Well, anyway, look, you know the story anyway. The hare was boasting, I'm really speedy. When I put on full speed, I can race anyone. The tortoise said quietly, I accept your challenge. This is a good joke. I could dance round you anytime. Keep your boasting till you've won, answered the tortoise. Shall we race? So they did race. I'm not going to read it because this thing is here. The hare darted out of sight but soon stopped, and to show his contempt for the tortoise, he lay down and took a nap. The tortoise plodded on and on, and when the hare finally woke up, he saw the tortoise just near the winning post and could not run up in time to save the race. Then the tortoise said, slow but steady progress wins the race. Do you think that picture book writing is hare fast or tortoise slow? If you answered tortoise slow, you are right. Slow but steady progress wins the race. In picture book writing, I'm sure in picture book illustrations. I love this book by Malcolm Gladwell, who talked about the fact that if you want to become a master at something, you have to spend 10,000 hours, that there's no way to avoid that. Well, I hope one of the ways to avoid it is to take the webinar and read my book, okay? There are no shortcuts. Writing is problem solving, and darn it, if each time you solve one problem, a new problem is created. Honestly, just changing one word can lead to big changes in your manuscript. Writing is rewriting and rewriting and more rewriting. It's a rare story that comes out ready for publication the first time out. Now, I want to tell you a story about a wonderful book called The Tree Lady, which is written by a man named H. Joseph Hopkins. And I met Joe, and I heard the first draft of this story. We were at a conference in Portland, Oregon, and he read it out, and it was brilliant. Brilliant. I'm going to read you just the first 2 pages so you can hear the music of it. Catherine Olivia Sessions grew up in the woods of Northern California. She gathered leaves from oaks and elms. She collected needles from pines and redwoods, and she braided them together with flowers to make necklaces and bracelets. It was the 1860s, and girls from Kate's side of town weren't supposed to get their hands dirty. But Kate did. Kate listened well in school. She learned how to write and count. She remembered the poems and stories she read. But best of all, she liked studying wind and rain, muscles and bones, plants and trees, oh, especially trees. Most girls were discouraged from studying science, but not Kate. Now, we were all blown away by this story. It has this repetitive phrase that's so wonderful and holds the book together, and it's an inspiring story. And I was really envious of Joe that he could just write this off the top of his head. But years later, I heard him at giving a talk. He won an award for this book. And he said actually he'd been thinking about this book and mulling it over in his mind for years. He'd read about her. He'd visited San Diego where she planted all of her trees. He taught special needs children, and he knew that repetition was important to help them learn to read. He loved sharing this story verbally with them. So he'd written the book for years before he put it down to paper. Now, there are considered to be 7 basic plots in a story. I have to confess that I've never read this book. It's supposed to be about 500 pages long and really deep, but I just took the 7 basic plots to share with you and relating them to children's books. I'm going to assume that all of you know Where the Wild Things Are by Maurice Sendak. This story is a classic overcoming the monster, and it's the monster inside the child who's misbehaving and goes away to the land where the wild things are and comes back a new and a calmer child. He overcame his monster. Now, Will Terry knows Helen Ketterman and has illustrated several books by her. If you want to read someone who is an amazing writer and who takes old fairy tales and puts them in new settings, she is a master at this. But Rags, this is Bubba the Cowboy Prince, is a Cinderella story, only Bubba is the sweet cowboy whose stepdaddy and stepbrothers torture him and are cruel to him. But he wins Miss Lurleen in the end. Oh, and the fairy godmother is a fairy god cow. It's a very funny book. All right, The Quest. This is a newer book and a contemporary book. Here's a child who wants something. This is a little boy, he wants to wear a dress to school. And it's the story of how he convinces his parents and how he I'm sorry, I keep reading the questions and comments up here. I get distracted. Okay, he wants to, and how he deals with his friends at school over this. He does eventually wear a dress. Okay, The Treasure by Uri Shulevich. Such a lovely book. A Voyage and Return. Isaac has a dreams over and over that he should go to the capital and look for a treasure under the bridge by the royal palace. He goes there. He stays for days. Nothing happens. Finally, a soldier says, "What on earth are you doing here?" And he tells him about his dream, and the soldier laughs at him and said, "How ridiculous. I had a dream once about a treasure under the stove of a man named Isaac." So Isaac goes home, and there is his treasure, A Voyage and a Return. Comedy, Click, Clack, Moo, Cows That Type. Love this book of the cows going on strike. Tragedy, oh, now this is almost a wordless picture book by the amazingly talented Marla Frazee. And it's a sweet, sad story about a farmer who's lonely and a poor little clown who either jumps or falls off of the circus train, and the farmer takes him home, and they have a very sweet time together, and they both help one another. And then the train comes back, and the clown goes back on the train. He's very happy. This could have been a tragedy, the poor farmer left alone again. But in children's books, we like to give children hope. So we give, in this book, there's a little monkey from the clown train, from the circus train, who drops off and follows the farmer home. So the farmer is not lonely anymore. Rebirth, the classic, the very hungry caterpillar. He eats and eats and eats, goes to sleep in his cocoon, and is reborn a beautiful butterfly. Okay, if there are only 7 basic plots, how do we make our stories unique? And that's going to be part of what we're talking about. I'm going to give you 3 ways today just to sort of whet your appetite, but we'll go into them in further depth and we'll talk about other ways in the 9-week webinar. Okay, the first one is to tell your story from a different point of view. I love this book, School's First Day of School. It's a new book this year, and the school is very nervous. He talks to the janitor. Yeah, we have to take a great imagination, right? The school is talking to the janitor. But the school is worried what's going to happen. Now, there are a million books published about school, about first days at school. They're usually told from the child's point of view. Here's Adam telling it from the school's point of view. It's a wonderful, wonderful book. Move your story to a new location. Best Friends in the Whole Universe by Antoinette Tortoise. This is a book of friendship. How many books do we have of friendship where the friends disagree and then they don't talk to one another and then they get back together again? Well, Antoinette moved this book to the planet Boborp, and she used a new Boborp language. So friends is really best friends. I'm just going to read you the first pages. This is a very short book. Yelfred and Omek had been best friends since they were little blobbies instead of babies, blobbies, which isn't easy on planet Boborp, where teeth are long, that's teeth, and tempers are short, not like here on planet Earth. And the book goes on like that. So she took an ordinary story and made it extraordinary. Now, this is one of my favorite books of all time, Owl Babies. I mentioned it in my book. But here, Martin Waddell changed the characters into animals. This is a story that kids can identify with. Little children, when their parents leave the room, when they close the door and tuck them in for nap time, often are upset. They are wondering if their parents will come back. But imagine if Martin had written 3 little kids realize that their mother has gone and left them alone. That would be very scary for kids. By making it animals, he puts a safe distance between the child reader and the story. I did this with If Animals Kiss Goodnight. As I told you, I removed it from the mother and child story. I made it into just the animal story. There are other ways to tell your story, and we'll discuss them in the webinar. We'll also discuss the unique picture book audience and the impact that it has on your story and your language. Remember, sorry to show this picture again, there's a double audience in picture books. There's the children, who many of them cannot read, and there's the adult reader. And we have to connect to both of them. How many of you have read books to kids and you can't stand it and you try and hide the book or return it quickly to the library? I think this is why we have to think about both audiences. All right, we don't write plays, but our stories do need 3 acts. And we're going to talk about those 3 acts in picture books because they are different from the 3 acts in a play. The first act and the third act are very short in picture books. The big middle of the picture book, the second act, is much longer than either the first and the third act combined. So we'll talk about that. We'll also discuss how to fit your plot into the 32 pages of a picture book. Now, when I first started writing, I did not count the pages of picture books. I just wrote my stories. I was naive and foolish. I certainly needed those 10,000 hours to learn. But okay, picture books are printed on this big sheet of paper. And as you can see, there are 4 pages going down, and then more 4, more 4, more 4. So there's 16 pages here. And if you turn it over, there's 16 pages on the other side, 32 pages. Now, if you're wanting to make a longer picture book, you have to think about this and add pages increased of 8, okay? So, how do you count the pages in a picture book? This was something that you cannot count the end papers. Now, end papers are the papers that are of a different material from the main book that hold the book to the hardcover, that hold the pages to the hardcover. Here are 2 traditional contemporary picture books. I know Wee Piggy, Brave Girl, but some picture books are bigger. They add a whole row of pages. So it's not just 1 page and blank paper. It's 4 pictures on one side, 4 on the other, 4 pages, multiples of 8. Often in these books, you will see that the end papers are not different from the paper that the book is told, that the story is told on. These pages have to be counted, even though even the page that's pasted onto the hardcover. Both schools' first day of school and I Don't Want to Be a P are 2 40-page picture books. So is Everything to Spend the Night, and I was able to copy the end papers here, which are not part of the story but sort of bring all the story together. They have all the things that the child packed into her bag. So the blank page behind this picture is counted as page 1, and this is page 2. And then 3 will be the end papers, will be the continuation of this alphabet thing, and then the book starts. So when you have end papers, to count the right number of pages, you have to count the pages pasted onto the board. I hope that's easy to understand. If you're a CALDECOTT winner, you can even have 48 pages. But I would encourage all of you who are new to picture books to keep your story to fit the 32-page format. Think of this as publishers taking a financial risk to publish your book. And if you are new or little published, they want to invest as little as possible. So try to make your first, try and think always, I do always think in terms of 32 pages. We're also going to talk about how to write an opening that grabs, and I'm going to give you an example from this charming book called Otter and Otter, a love story. And here's the opening. The river sparkled the day Otter found love. He was not looking for it, love that is. He was looking for dinner. I think that's so silly and delightful. Great opening. It lets you know you're at the river. It's a story about love. And you have an idea that he found love, but it wasn't what he was expecting. We're also going to talk about write a page turner. You know, in Word Builder, I talked about building paragraphs into chapters. In picture books, honestly, each page turn feels like it needs a chapter hook, something that makes you turn the page. And That's Good, That's Bad, which is a great example. It's an old book, I know, but it's told by two narrators, by two people talking, and one is telling the story and they say something that happens, and the other kids, the person who's listening says, oh, that's good, and the narrator says, that's bad. And then you have to turn the page to see why it's bad. And then you see why it's bad, and the character says, oh, that's bad, and then the narrator says, well, no, that's good, and then you turn the page to see why. Here's a contemporary book that does have wonderful page turns. A funny thing happened on the way to school, and here is one of the page turns. The kid is explaining to the teacher why he's late to school, and then I became gigantic, so I decided to take 3 colossal steps to school, but on the second step I returned to my regular size and fell into a pond where I had to fight off a strange blob. And then you want to turn the page and find out what happened. Page turns. We're also going to talk about how to create unforgettable characters. I love this book, Big Mean Mike. He was the biggest, toughest dog in the whole neighborhood. He had a big mean bark and big sharp teeth. You know what? I can't see it all here. He wore a big back collar, gleaming silver spikes, and his claws were big and mean and very, very pointy. A great character.
If you grab the top of that go to meeting, where it says go to meeting, I think you have the same configuration. You can maybe move it down a little bit and it'll go off your screen.
It's not doing that.
No? Okay.
So, all right, we're just moving backwards now. Okay. We'll just go and we'll make the best of it and we'll figure it out for next time, okay?
Sounds good.
Okay. We're also going to talk about how to tie everything together into a successful ending. How many of you have read books that you love and you're reading them along and then the ending comes and it falls flat and it ruins the whole book for you? So here's one of my most favorite endings, and this is so brilliant. He comes back from the land where the wild things are, Max does, and his supper is waiting for him, and you see the picture of him in the room and the supper there on the table, and you turn the page and there's no picture, and it just says, and it was still hot. Oh, that's so satisfying. Okay, but it's not enough to write a strong plot that fits into 32 pages. And this is what makes picture books so not easy to write, because it isn't just the story, it's how you tell the story. Picture books are close to poetry. They are meant to be spoken out loud. They are meant to be shared between people, just like poetry. Poetry was once a way of telling news, and the rhyming would help to remember it. They're brief. Poems are brief. They are focused on one thing. Okay, oh golly. Will, do you want to read this?
Yeah, I will. Mama's first day on the job. She comes home late, trudging up the stairs as if they laid that heavy stone right on her shoulders. She is gray as ashes, from her headscarf to her boots. Even her bouncy beaded earrings have gone dull. Oops, it moved a little.
I'm sorry. I was trying to move that.
Dull as dirt.
Okay. Okay. Now, what makes this so powerful, I think? This is a serious story. This won the Golden Kite for picture book text in 2013. You see the trudging, heavy shoulders going down. They're what we call falling rhythm words, and it makes it feel heavy, trudging, shoulders, ashes. Then I just love this bouncy beaded earrings. Those hard B's and D's almost bounce just like the earrings. And so the words are giving us the story, giving us the sense of the mood of the story. Our prose has to echo the action of the story. This is Lullaby Dragon. Now, it's the combination of love and lullaby, and listen to the lulling of the opening. Once there was a girl, an all-alone girl in her own little bed, in her own little room, in her own little castle, who didn't have a dragon for a friend. Compare that to Locomotive by Brian Floca. Floca, I don't know how to pronounce it. A storm, now comes the locomotive. The iron horse, the great machine, 50 feet and 40 tons, wheels spinning, rods swinging, motion within motion, running down the track. She's bright in her paint and her polish, the pride of her company and crew. She pulls her tender and train behind her. She rolls up close to where you wait, all heat and smoke and noise. Golly, you cannot read this quietly. You cannot read this slowly. It's noisy. Clang, 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 clang. Hear the hiss and the spit. Hear the engine breathe like a beast. It's loud. It's a different story, and the language has to that story. Picture books are short. Every single word counts. When I started writing, picture books were longer. Now, there are still longer picture books sold, but many of them, in my writing book, I talked about how I got nervous when my manuscripts were 700 words. Now I get nervous if they're 500. Kids are squirmy. They want to hear stories over and over again, and believe me, you don't want to read a 1,500-word story over and over again. Parents are tired and want their kids to go to sleep. They don't want to read a long story either, especially to your real young picture book audience. Okay, what's the best way to learn about picture books besides taking this webinar, where you're going to learn techniques for both fiction and nonfiction books? And we're going to be talking about those to those who are writers only, and to all you super talented people who can illustrate too. The best thing to do would be to read lots and lots and lots of books. Read books that have been published within the last 10 years, because publishing changes. It evolves from what went before. If you are a writer, read books that are, if you are just a writer, read books that are writers and illustrated by two different people. If you are an illustrator, read books that are written by someone who does both the words and the pictures. They're different things. You talented illustrators can take shortcuts that writers only need to include in their text. All right, the weekly assignment. Now, I'm not going to collect your assignments, but you want to get ahead in those 10,000 hours, you need to make dummies of your picture book. It's easy. All you need is paper, a stapler, scissors, that wonderful removable tape. I'm rushing now because we're getting close. And most importantly, a pen or a pencil. Take 8 pieces of paper. I hear you, Bettina. It's too fast. I'm sorry. Let me just say that if you read the text, and I will have you reading the text of my books before each class, you will be a little bit more of what I'm talking about. And I will have handouts, I'm going to talk about that in a minute, that will copy some of this for you, okay? Take 8 pieces of paper, cut them in half, staple them together, number the pages 1 to 32, type out the text, place the text on the exact pages it appears in, then study the text. It's not enough just to type up the text, just to make a dummy. You have to really pay attention and make notes on your dummy. Here's one that 2 pages that I did from Teddy Bear Tears, and you can see that I made comments. I usually make a star if I think there's a good page turn. I write notes to myself so that I can go back, and by making the notes, it puts it in my mind and I think about it more when I'm writing my own stories. Only look at books published in the last 10 years. I already said all this. Is there a textbook? Ta-da! Yes, there is. But I want you to know that I've learned a lot since I wrote this textbook, and I'll have some additional things of what I've learned, and I will also have mostly new books and new examples for you. Other books that I recommend, and I have a bibliography which I'll give you, The Writer's Guide to Crafting Stories for Children, very good on plotting and characters. Picture Writing by Anastasia Suen, very good on writing musically. I think, all right, I have a few minutes. Kathleen T. Hornig has a great book. It's for evaluating and reviewing children's books. But I think it's important for writers to know what reviewers are looking for. Of course, Writing with Pictures by Uri Shulevich. I love The Nuts and Bolts Guide to Writing Picture Books by Linda Ashman, and I think this is only available on her website or through Amazon. But she's a very lyrical writer, and her book is very good. And the last one is just some articles about children's writing. Save that for the last. Get the others first. Okay, in the webinar, there will be handouts, which will have some examples that I'll be doing in the webinar that you will have to keep. There will be a bibliography, which Lee already has. There will be homework assignments. There will be a checklist for evaluating your manuscripts. My hope is that you'll use the weekly sessions to work on a story, and then you'll bring it to the critique session at the last meeting. Okay? All right. So, if you're going to take the webinar, the reading assignment is to read the prologue and chapter 1 about becoming a picture book scholar, about the picture book audience, and the picture book form. I feel like I've talked really quickly. I'm sorry. I see a lot of people are lost, but okay.
I have questions to ask you that I've copied and pasted.
Okay.
So you don't have to worry about that. Okay? So when you're ready,
I'm ready.
Okay.
Oh, you want to put me on now? You get to see me live.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we can see you, but it won't record in the
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. So from Brad, I'm very interested.
Can you see me?
We can't see you now. We could see you before. You were on the whole time. Now you're on. Yeah, there you go. Now you're on.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
I know this software takes a little bit to get used to.
Yeah.
And Lee, if you'll look for any additional questions as I'm doing this in my mind, give Lee something to do. He's just been twiddling some fingers over there.
Okay. These are my owl glasses.
Okay, great. So if you don't want to answer these, you don't have to. You can say, you know what, that's a detailed question. I'm going to do that in the class. So
Okay.
this is up to you. You can do whatever you want. Okay, so from Brad, I'm very interested in how to correctly choose the correct age range my story would be catered to.
That is a problem, and usually the story dictates it. And we will talk further about that in terms next time about the audience of the story. You have to, your story how do I say this? Once someone handed in a picture book manuscript to me about a first date, and that obviously was not for a
Hmm.
young audience. That was really a book probably for teenagers, middle schoolers, and so the subject kind of dictates uh, what age it is, and then when you have the age, you have to think about the language that would be appropriate and the length.
Maybe another question to go along with that that I'll throw out there is, have you ever had a story idea that you chose not to flesh out because it didn't fit the age range you were really going for?
Uh, well, I can tell you that I've written picture books and I realized, in fact, I'm working on a novel right now that started as a picture book, and then I realized, oh my God, this is about the Revolutionary War, and 3-year-olds don't know about the Revolutionary War. And now it's a upper middle school, lower YA book, so
Mhm.
it's really changed. So yes, I do.
Okay, great. Okay, so from Karen, how do you handle the ending of a book that is the start on an ongoing story series?
Oh, wow. So each book will be, I've never done that.
Hmm.
I don't know how to answer that. The only series that, all right, well, in picture books, look at Fancy Nancy. Those are, each picture book is an individual story. It has a satisfying ending, and then the new book takes off in a totally new thing. If it's a continuation story, I don't really know how to answer that because you want the ending to be satisfying.
Hmm. And I might add too that what you're going to be teaching is you're shooting more for the middle, the the picture book market, and that would be a really niche kind of a project. So we probably won't be really going deep into something like that off on the
I,
side.
I I'm thinking of the day the crayons quit, and then there's a new one out now. I think they both stand alone.
Yeah, yeah, has
Okay,
to have the beginning,
sorry
middle, and
about
end.
that.
Okay, from Bettina, will there be a script or PDF of the PowerPoint presentation?
Oh boy. Um,
And you don't
I
have to answer that if you don't know. We can, we have
maybe we
you.
can discuss that because
Yeah.
I could see that there was a lot of information and people were getting lost. I think the classes will be more focused, and I have already made
Well,
things for people for 2 of the webinars, and we'll consider about the others.
and we talked about using your book as part of the text for the class, right?
Mhm.
So, and I posted a link for them to find your book on Amazon. I don't
Oh,
know if
okay.
there's another place where you'd rather have people go, but um, that's a really good place to start. But also, we said that if we need to put stuff in PDF form, we can help you do that.
Can do that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
If people want that, I'm happy to do it.
Okay. And then Eric had a question about creating a unique language in books. Things such as this would seem to be hard to sell to publishers, seeing that it could be detrimental to kids' reading development. How do we know if something like this is acceptable or not?
Well, I read you that example from Best Friends. And she has a lot of made-up words in here that are, I think, pretty understandable. I heard the book read out loud first. Now I am an adult. That's true. But I think this book is very popular with kids. Made-up words are fun. They are fun.
Yeah.
Kids love them. Supercalifragilistic. You know, they become
It also goes back to the age, right? I mean, if you're reading to a 6 to 8-year-old, it's a lot different experience than if you're reading to an early, a 1 and 2-year-old board book. And so,
right.
it varies for sure.
Right. You do have to consider your audience in everything that you write. Thank you, Lee.
Yeah. And Lee is asking a question. Can you explain how the critique session will go? What does that look like?
Okay. Well, what we thought was that people would submit the manuscripts to me, maybe I was thinking a week before we do it, and I will look at them and we will post them on the screen and everybody can see them, and everybody can comment.
Yeah.
And I'll give you my comments too.
Okay.
Okay?
Great.
Now we're going to break that into 2 sessions because we can't possibly do 20 of those in an hour.
Right. And what we'll do is we'll have...
And it's going to be tough, don't you think? That's why I was asking, is I was just wondering, are we actually going to be able to get through 10 manuscripts even in one session?
Look, we will do it for as long as everybody's manuscript gets critiqued.
That's right.
So, and if it goes too long, we'll do it the next day.
Make sure you have water. You're well rested.
The last 3 days.
Right.
Here's a question for Mary. What does Anne think about using hidden images in the illustrations that engage the listener to search for visually and help the memory along with adding additional interest?
Say that again.
It keeps scooting up as people are... What is Anne? It's hard to read. What does Anne think? Okay, stop commenting, you guys. What does Anne think about using hidden images in the illustrations that engage the listener to search for visually and help the memory along with adding additional interest?
All right. We're going to talk about this in the next session. I don't know if it's hidden images, but when the pictures are there, especially to the pre-reader, to bring them into the story. So the illustrations have a story also. And I guess I can give you an example in one of my books, Hello Toes, Hello Feet. I never mention a dog in the story, never a word about it. But the illustrator puts in a dog, and the dog is doing things along with the story. That's not hidden, but it's extra pictures that get the kids interested and reading the story, reading the pictures.
Okay.
I don't know about hidden.
Yeah.
Is that maybe like Where's Waldo or something?
Probably something like that.
Okay.
But again, we can probably talk about that more in the class.
Well, like search for picture hidden in illustration. That would have to relate to the story. I think that's a thing an editor would think about.
Yeah. Do you have a word cap on manuscripts submitted for critique?
Uh,
That one's from Tracy.
Tracy, no, I don't, because look, there are picture books, and we will talk about them, that have 1,000 words and more, but they are not for the youngest child. They are for an upper elementary school, an older child. But no, I don't have a limit, but don't send me a picture book with 3,000 words. I mean,
You
it
know,
would be hard to be published.
as a dad, I hated reading the really long ones because my kids would never stay on my lap. They would do that slinky thing where their arms go up and then they like try to slide out, you know.
Right. Right.
So Tasha asked, do we need to have a story already written and then tweak it in the class, or can we start on a story from scratch?
No, you can do whatever you want. Whatever you want.
Yeah, because we're not going to look
will,
at them till the end.
Right. So, I have to admit that when I was learning about writing and taking a class, I would hand in a picture book and I would get a critique, and I would think, oh, I can't do this. I don't like this story anymore. So I think that's going to happen along the way. If you have a story you like that you're working on, for heaven's sakes, use it in the class. I will give one assignment for a possible story for those of you who have not written a story. But mostly we'll be revising, so it will be helpful if you have a story already written.
Great. Okay.
One quick question: if the illustrations are really an integral part of it, or if we do have writer illustrators, which we probably do given our group, yes, should we submit it with thumbnails, or are you just looking for the writing?
No, you know what? If you're a writer illustrator, I'd like to see the illustrations, but I'm not going to critique the illustrations because I don't know about that.
Right.
Will and I can throw our 2 cents.
Throw your cents in.
Earlier I had said, no, we're not going to critique the illustrations, but that's a great question that Joanna just brought up that Lee mentioned there is, if your story relies on the illustrations, yes, we do need to see them in that sense. But
right.
yeah,
We'll talk about them in a narrative sense. We're not going to critique composition and technique, all the stuff that we do in the other SVS classes. It'll just be how it pertains to story.
Yep. Great.
Okay.
I think we've done a great job. I think you did a great job. Lee and I, we just
awesome.
Hung out. No, you're great. This is I'm really looking forward to this. Somebody snatched up one of the seats in the class while we were in, so there's one left. And so yeah, so anyway, we started.
Are we full?
No, we have one left. Somebody jumped into one while we were in the webinar, and so one left, and whether or not someone takes that or not, we will look forward to seeing everybody that's in the class 1 week from tonight.
Okay.
And hopefully we will share with Anne how to get rid of that pesky GoToMeeting control so she can read her.
Figure it out, and I will try and make sure that I'm not going too quickly. But this was a special thing we were trying to go through.
I wouldn't worry about that. It's recorded anyway, so people can watch it again.
People can come and watch it.
And what we do in the live classes, we have you, if you want to ask a question, we love for you to ask your question live so we don't have to read it for you, and it'll make it easier for you to get the nuance right of the question, is simply just write the word question in the chat, and then we will unmute you, and then you can, when Anne takes a breath, you can go, hey, Anne, I had a question. Okay. This is Sally, or this is John, and this is, and hopefully it pertains to what you're talking about. Oh,
so as we're going along, they can ask questions. Is that
Unless you don't want that.
That's good.
Because we usually do that in class.
Okay. That's fine.
Okay. Now, hopefully everyone doesn't ask a question about your cat or your dog. You had a cute dog there yesterday.
Oh, yeah. Well, she may show up later.
Okay. All right.
Take the class and meet my dog. Okay.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Yeah.
It's been great.
Bye, everybody.
All right, bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Good night.
Okay. Oops.